science of bracketology. So anyone who has read any translated versions of the Quran, which is most people will be familiar with this one, is a lot of fun. Is when you actually read a version in the Quran and it tells you something that is not in the original. And generally, they actually write that in brackets, or in this case, in brackets. So,
Parentheses in
but
this case. Yeah.
parentheses. So they are not showing in the original Arabic, but they add it anyway. So we have, for example, Hilali Khan in this Surah 97 saying, and we have sent it. That's actually what it says in the Quran, by the way. We have sent it, or we sent it, actually. I think it's past tense. And then he adds this Quran. It's like, no, there is no this Quran in that verse at all. In fact, once you get to verses 4 and 5, you see that it is talking about the birth of Jesus. It doesn't match even the stories about Al-Qadr is a complete mess, this verse. I guess that's why they don't really get Muslims to really look into this one in detail. We have as well videos on that on the channel, and lots of people are starting to show that surah is all about the birth of Jesus, and very clearly so. But anyway, still with these translations, we have a look at Yusuf Ali, and he actually doesn't add Quran. He actually adds message. We have indeed revealed this message. It's like, okay, I think it's a big difference between revealing a Quran and revealing a message. It's quite different. But we get to Sahih International, and look how cheeky they were. They didn't even put it in brackets. They simply write, "We sent the Quran down." That's not in the Arabic. So
No, but you
very,
see,
very naughty.
it says Sahih. It's Sahih. You see, it's Sahih. No, so this is crazy. It's crazy, right? Because we have three levels to this. One is Yusuf Ali. He's like, I won't go all the way, but I'll sort of hint there with my parentheses of message here, right? Then Hilali Khan goes what level higher is like, okay, I'm just going to put the word Quran here. And then Sahih International says, okay, whatever. I'm just going to put it without parentheses, without brackets. I'm just going to sneak the word, which is not in the Arabic text at all, into my translation.
Yeah, and we see as well the different methods as to how they are doing this. So we normally use, or at least I really like these ones, Hilali Khan, Yusuf Ali, and Daif International. I think I'm going to start calling it that.
Yeah.
And there is plenty of this. By the way, I actually generally used Sahih International, sorry, Daif International. I have to remember that one. But Hilali Khan is hilarious. They add so much stuff. It's phenomenal. If anybody wants to laugh, just have a look. Just look up at all of the additional information that they have to add to the very clear book. And it's just quite something. Uh, Now, when you have small things like the other two translators, which they add something like, oh, for power or element or something like that, I wouldn't have an issue with that. It's okay, fine. They're trying to clarify something. It doesn't change the meaning. But when you look at Hilali Khan, if it's actually saying, if we're talking to Al Madina, it's like, okay, well, the Arabic actually says city, the city. That could be any city, and it is most likely going to be talking about Jerusalem. But never mind. But then once you read, indeed, the more honorable, and then he adds in bracket all of that, a whole story. Later, a moment later, Allah's messenger, and a moment later, Muhammad. It's like, okay, so you have here some verses that they are talking about 2,000 years ago, but because of the translation, you think that this was happening 1,400 years ago. Those things were not there. And just like we've seen when they mistranslated the tenses, this is what is happening throughout the translations. They keep putting all of these words under the false pretense of, well, we're helping you. And it's like, no, you are just convincing people that they're reading a bunch of stories from the 7th century Hijaz region, when that's actually not the case. If they didn't add all of these things, people would start to think, hang on a minute, why is it that Mecca only appears once in the Quran, mentioned only once? There should be lots of places. I mean, it should be just everywhere. It's not implied. Why is even Jerusalem mentioned more than Mecca? But what about Badr? And what about all of these things? So people would start to catch on and realize that those stories, they are not talking about those places. It has nothing to do with the Hijaz. But because they keep adding all of these words, you get persuaded into believing that we are dealing 7th century Hijaz when it's not the case.
Precisely.
Oh, Badr. forgot that that one was there. So this one is an interesting one. Well, Hilali Khan, see, he actually adds, he doubles the size of this particular verse just by explaining things, and it happens to attach everything to Allah and so on. But the interesting bit is the Battle of Badr. So the Battle of Badr never happened, which is kind of sad when you actually see people talk for about the Battle of Badr for days, and they tell you all the lineage and stuff. None of that thing happened. The thing is that Saint Murad translates Badr how it was. That was the name. I think is the 14th night of the full moon or something like that. But there is nothing to do with a battle. If you read those verses, if I think probably everybody watching would have already purchased the translation from Murad, just go to that section where it says Badr, start maybe 20 verses before, and then read another 20 verses after. Just read them and see how much you can see in there that is telling you clearly that it's talking about the Hijaz. It isn't. Everything will be very, very vague. And you can see how they do these things. They create a narrative of a battle called the Battle of Badr, and then they add that to the Quran when it isn't. So
What likely happened is they had a tradition about a battle, and then they had a word in the Quran, and then they said, okay, that battle was Badr, Badr. You know, that's probably what
yeah,
happened.
the battles certainly did happen. I mean, the whole Rida wars happened, except that they weren't because of apostasy. Those people were basically the empire was created because people were fighting. They were actually conquering lands and so on. It just has nothing to do with Islam. They just rewrote the whole story and saying, yeah, everything was about Islam. It's like, no, that was much, much later. And
Mhm.
that's pretty much what we're doing. By unpicking all of this, we see that all of this stuff that actually appears in the book is telling a very different story. We don't read the Quran, we read the standard Islamic narrative. And this is another very clear example. So, Surah 45 is the one that people look at when they're looking at Sharia. And we have a video on the channel where we actually cover that. It's not talking about anything to do with Islam. It's all about the Jews and the Christians, or rather the Jews differing among themselves because of the coming of Jesus. And that's that. There is nothing in those verses that talk about Islam. And if you haven't watched the video, go and watch it later, and you will see there is nothing. But when you read the translations, you encounter these things. And we put you, O Muhammad, on an ordained way concerning the matter of religion. You see that, and your brain goes immediately to 7th century Hijaz, on verses that are very, very clearly talking about the dispute of the Jews because of the coming of Jesus, like a very basic stuff. And of course, if you look Hilali Khan, things are a lot worse. Lots of words there, and he even gives you tafsir, which is quite interesting.
And with Sahih International here, I mean, with all of them, they have achieved the same end, right? But they're taking a verse which we can go into detail another time, but has nothing to do with giving mankind some kind of eternal legalistic law code that needs to be enforced in the population, right? That's just created out of thin air through reading the standard Islamic narrative into this verse, just forcing it in. And then all of a sudden you've created now justification from a 7th century document that justifies your innovations up to the for the 12th century probably. But you can now insert whatever you want and say God's law. This is God's law, and He gave us this law in this verse. No, He didn't, right? So you just read the standard Islamic narrative into it, and apparently get paid to propagate it as a translator.
Yeah, well, there is one thing I don't really like to talk much about, and is the psychological element of all of this. When they're telling to Muslims something all the time, which is bida is bad, be that never ever you're going to hell. By doing that, they conclude, this is just psychological say effect, that the guy saying that they have to be telling the truth, they're the truthful, they wouldn't do beta. Somebody tells you, hey, if you go in there something bad is going to happen, you're never going to assume that it means that if you're going there that guy is going to do something bad to you.
Right.
You will think that that person is on your side. So it's a psychological aspect. By they really tell Muslims, oh, bida is so bad. But then when you go to their history, traditions, the whole thing is bida from start to finish, which is super cool. But
Yeah. Yeah.
and I really like that comment. The battle went really, really bad. Oh boy.
I saw that too.
And let's see, do we have any others? Oh, yes. And just the last one, just to show, this is just some examples. You can actually go have a look, particularly Hilary Khan. It really is hilarious, but Daif International is very, very good as well. And Yusuf Ali, sometimes he gets it right. It's quite surprising. But you read this, and you can see in one of the verses, and mention in the book. And then he tells you, well, that is the Quran, and it's Muhammad who has to actually tell people. So, and it's the story of Miriam. And he's like, hang on a minute, you're talking about a book. We have already established that the whole thing is from 600 years before all of this happened. So if this is talking about a book, it would be either the Torah or the Injil, and it's mentioning Mary, so it is the Injil. It's not rocket science, but they write those things. But think about it in this way: according to the standard Islamic narrative, Allah says to Jibril to say to Muhammad a number of things. So Jibril gets to Muhammad and says, "Oh, Muhammad, okay, look," and mention in the book the story of Miriam, okay? And then Muhammad goes to the people, and instead of just start to tell the story of Miriam, he says verbatim the words from Jibril. Think about the insanity of that, of having to repeat exactly those words from Jibril and mention in the book Miriam. It's like, this is insane. It really is. How can you not see that this is a preacher just saying to his preachers or something along those lines? Like, hey, I'm mentioning the book, whatever. If you just follow it through, imagine Mohammed getting this information from Jibril and then saying these bits and pieces, basically not going and doing what he's been told. He's also saying as well the instruction that he was given and mentioned in the book is absolute nonsense.
It's like when you have a politician who's very old, let's say Joe Biden or something, right? And they read the teleprompter, and in the teleprompter it has like instructions. You know how you have like those asterisks, and then in between you have like words or whatever, and then you read out your instructions too, like sit down on the chair. That shouldn't be in Allah's eternal word, shall it? Should
Pause
it?
for applause.
Yeah, exactly. Pause for applause. Exactly. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing here, right? But yeah,
Yeah, and on the second one, verse 17, and to her we sent to her our ruh, and then in bracket, angel Jibril. It's like, hang on a minute, the whole thing with the ruh is just, it's ruh. No, it's angel, trust me, even if it's ruh, which is spirit or breath of holiness. It's like, it's just really, really bad.
well, they
But
have to do
anyway,
this
this is
because
just
there's no verse that says that the angel Gabriel was the ruh. There's nothing like that. They have to add this inside the translations. That's the only way to get people to understand that the ruh is Gabriel. It's the only way.
yeah, I was actually very surprised when I actually read, or rather, I started studying the Quran in this manner, and I thought that Jibril was everywhere in the book. So imagine my surprise when digging into this, I realized that he's only mentioned three times. One is alongside Michael, and then the other two appearances, they're back to back. It's like, no, hang on a minute. Why did I think that Jibril appears everywhere? Well, because before I started studying the Quran in this manner, I was reading Sahih International and another one. I don't know which one is the other one that I was reading. Probably Hilali Khan or something. So yeah, I think this shows quite clearly they actually add things. But let's finish this section with the other insertions, which are, well, Muhammad. So Muhammad or Mahmad only appears four times in the Quran, and we have seen in two places which it is translated incorrectly to deceive. They are in the past tense. So the Mahmad is in the past tense. He's attached to something descending over him. It sounds quite a lot like the Holy Spirit to me. And he removed sins, and he amended people's conditions. Right. So we should have an idea already who the original Muhammad actually was. But when we read the Quran, Muhammad seems to appear everywhere. Well, because they insert him. And here we have like a list of all of the verses where they insert Muhammad. And just like that, the verses change from addressing basically the listeners or the readers to addressing a third person. It changes the verse completely. Is bida completely. from start to finish. But that's all right because it's only been added to these verses, well, and these ones as well. But that's that, and these ones actually, um, these ones as well. Okay, so that's I think we're nearly done. A few more, and these ones, and also in here, and here, and a few more, and a few more, and more, and a few more, and here as well. All of that is beta, and more beta, and more reinterpretation, and a little bit more. The guy that appears 4 times, and they are not in there,
But he's
or there,
everywhere. Look, so many
or
verses.
there,
Oh Muhammad, oh Muhammad, oh Muhammad.
or there. Am I going to be accused that I've been the one that actually went there and added "Oh Mohammed" and then I added abstractly? This is, I think, it's Saki International, all right. But
Okay.
hey, it would be interesting to know how many times he's added on the other versions, and there, and all of those, and that's the end. So I think that meme shows what they are trying to do.
The water keeps flowing though. It's not working. We need more tape.
Well, you see how it is. You actually try to duct tape something when people realize that Mohammed only appears 4 times in the book. If you are not an Arabic speaker, then you've probably never found that out. And suddenly you realized that all of those stories that you thought they were about Mohammed, he was never in the verses. You realize you are on the side of the liars, and you should really reconsider your team. Um,
You're
right?
Dean. Yeah, yeah. Or you just reconsider what you how you know what you know, right? Like who are you trusting? Who you assuming are telling you the truth, and maybe they aren't, right? So you should investigate the truth, which we know who that actually is a title for, right? But you should investigate the truth for yourself, and you'll find you'll what is the quote? And then you shall know the truth, and it shall set you free. That's true.
Yes, and generally speaking, if somebody tells you, look, I've already given you the truth, don't go looking for anything else because otherwise you're going to hell. Don't investigate, don't explore. Those are the ones lying to you. I mean, just I think Christians, they say to Christians, yes, go explore whatever they tell you. Oh yeah, the Muslims tell you the Ruh was created during the Third Council of Nicaea. It's like, go and explore the documents. They are up there. It's like, you do your own research. With Muslims, is the other way around. But anyway, everything is starting to collapse. Well, actually, not starting; is collapsed. So,
Yeah. Oh, everything's
um,
collapsing, continuously collapsing.
continuously collapsing. Actually, we need to ask Murad how that's
Right.
in Arabic.